Welcome to World of Science Fiction Stories. I'm your narrator Stanko. Listen our sci-fi story written by me. The Crimson Dawn. The hum of the Crimson Dawn's engineering bay provided a steady backdrop as Commander Zara Thorne stood motionless, arms outstretched, while Dex Caney made the final adjustments to her combat armor. His calloused hands moved with practiced precision, checking each servo, testing every joint mechanism that could mean the difference between life and death in tomorrow's raid. Shoulder articulation is running at 97%, Dex murmured, his breath warm against her neck as he leaned close to examine the joint housing. I can get it to full capacity if you give me another hour. Zara suppressed a shiver that had nothing to do with the cool metal against her skin. 97% is fine. We launch at 0600. Your life depends on that 3%, Commander. His fingertips grazed her collarbone as he adjusted the chest plate's alignment. I won't send you out there with suboptimal gear. She turned her head slightly, catching the intensity in his steel-gray eyes. Dex Caney had joined her crew 8 months ago, a former mercenary with impressive credentials and an even more impressive collection of scars. What had surprised her wasn't his skill with weapons and armor, but his unwavering dedication to keeping her alive. You worry too much, she said softly. Someone has to. His hand stilled on the armor's chest piece. You certainly don't worry enough about yourself. The comment hung between them, charged with an intimacy that neither acknowledged aloud. Zara had built her reputation on fearlessness, leading the resistance fleet against impossible odds while the hegemony empire tightened its stranglehold on human colonies. She couldn't afford to show weakness, couldn't let anyone see the weight of responsibility that sometimes kept her awake at night. Anyone except Dex, apparently. Systems check complete, he announced, stepping back reluctantly. Armor integrity at maximum, all weapon systems synchronized. You're ready for war. Zara flexed her arms, feeling the armor respond like a second skin. You do exceptional work. I have exceptional motivation. The words came out rougher than he'd intended. She paused in her equipment check, studying his profile as he busied himself with his tools. Dex was perhaps the only person aboard who never tried to curry favor with her, never sought advancement or recognition. He simply did his job with meticulous care, as if her survival was the only thing that mattered to him. If only she knew how complicated the truth really was. Hidden in his quarters, sealed in a titanium case beneath his bunk, was a communication device that connected him to very different masters. The contract had been clear: infiltrate Commander Thorne's inner circle, gain her complete trust, then eliminate her at the moment of maximum strategic impact. The payment would set him up for life, enough to disappear to the outer rim and never look back. It should have been simple. He'd killed for money before, had built his reputation on being utterly reliable. But watching Zara now, seeing the way she carried the hopes of every resistance fighter, the way she shouldered impossible burdens without complaint, made his chest tighten in unfamiliar ways. Dex. Her voice brought him back to the present. You seem distracted. Just running final diagnostics in my head, he lied smoothly. Tomorrow's mission is high risk. I want everything perfect. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of her soap, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. I trust you completely. You know that, right? The words hit him like a physical blow. Trust. The very thing he was being paid to betray. I know, he managed. Good. She smiled, and for a moment the weight of command lifted from her shoulders. Because I don't know what I'd do without you. Neither did he, and that was becoming a very dangerous problem. The medical bay's harsh lighting cast deep shadows across Zara's face as she sat on the examination table, her armor scattered in pieces around the room. Blood seeped through the temporary bandages Dex had applied in the shuttle bay, crimson stains marking where hegemony pulse rounds had found gaps in her protection. Hold still, Dex murmured, his hand steady despite the tremor in his voice. The battle had been closer than either of them had anticipated. Too close. He'd watched her armor take hit after hit, seen her stumble when shrapnel tore through her side, and felt something crack inside his chest that had nothing to do with the mission. "It's not as bad as it looks," Zara said, though her pale complexion suggested otherwise. "It's bad enough." His fingers traced the edge of the wound on her shoulder, gentle despite their roughness. "You were exposed for 17 seconds when your left shoulder servo locked. 17 seconds too long." She winced as he cleaned the wound. "The mission was a success. We got the intelligence we needed." "At what cost?" The words came out harsher than he'd intended. "You could have died out there." Something in his tone made her look up, studying his face in the dim light. "Would that have mattered to you?" The question hung between them like a live wire. Dex's hands stilled on her bandages, and for a moment the careful walls he'd built around his emotions crumbled. "Yes," he said quietly. "It would have mattered." Zara's breath caught. She'd commanded loyalty before, had inspired men and women to follow her into impossible battles. But the way Dex was looking at her now was different. Raw. Personal. "Dex," she began. "I know it's not my place," he said, resuming his careful ministrations. "You're the commander, I'm just the armorer. But watching you take those hits, seeing you bleeding." He paused, jaw tightening. "I can't be objective about your safety anymore." The admission settled between them like a confession. Zara felt her heart rate quicken, and not from blood loss. "Maybe I don't want you to be objective," she whispered. His hands stilled again. When he looked up, the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "Zara," he said her name like a prayer. She reached up, fingers tracing the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "How did you get this?" "Shrapnel from a mining station explosion. I was 19, stupid and cocky. Like I was today." "No." His hand covered hers, pressing her palm against his cheek. "You were brave. There's a difference." The space between them seemed to shrink. Zara was acutely aware of his warmth, the way his thumb traced gentle circles on her wrist, the careful way he avoided putting pressure on her injuries even as he drew closer. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About the mission tomorrow." Dex's chest tightened. Tomorrow. The word carried weight he wasn't ready to bear. "The intelligence we gathered today, it confirms what I've suspected for months. The hegemony is building something big in the Zirian system. A weapon that could end the resistance permanently." "What kind of weapon?" "The kind that makes all of this meaningless." She gestured weakly at the scattered armor, the bloodied bandages, the war that had consumed their lives. "But I have a plan. A way to stop them before they can deploy it." Dex felt the ground shift beneath him. His handlers had been right, Zara Thorne was more dangerous than they'd realized. Not just as a military commander, but as a symbol of hope that the hegemony couldn't afford to let survive. "Tell me," he said, hating himself for the words. "I can't give you all the details yet. Too dangerous. But I'll need your help, Dex. I'll need someone I trust absolutely." Trust. That word again, cutting through him like a blade. "You have it," he said, the lie burning his throat. Zara smiled, and in that moment she looked younger, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "I knew I could count on you." She leaned forward, her forehead touching his. Her breath was warm against his lips, and he could smell the faint scent of her perfume beneath the metallic tang of blood and battle. "Zara," he whispered, torn between pulling away and closing the final distance between them. "I know this complicates things," she said softly. "But after today, after almost losing you out there, I can't pretend anymore. I care about you, Dex. More than I should." The words hit him like physical blows. In his quarters, the sealed communication device waited with its encrypted messages and countdown timers. 48 hours until the kill order became active. 48 hours until he had to choose between the woman looking at him with such trust and vulnerability, and the life he'd built on betrayal and blood money. I care about you too, he admitted, the truth tearing out of him against his will. When she kissed him, soft and tentative, tasting of hope and something indefinable that made his chest ache, Dex Caney realized he was in more trouble than any contract had ever prepared him for. The encrypted message burned in Dex's mind as he watched Zara sleep. She lay curled against his side in the narrow bunk of his quarters, her breathing steady and peaceful for the first time in weeks. Dawn's cycle lighting filtered through the porthole, casting soft shadows across her bare shoulders where the bandages from yesterday's battle still clung to her skin. 24 hours. That's all he had left before the kill order became non-negotiable. His personal communicator had been pulsing red for the past 6 hours, urgent priority messages from his handlers that he'd been ignoring. But he couldn't ignore them much longer. The hegemony didn't tolerate delays, especially not when their most wanted target was planning something that could shift the entire balance of power. Zara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw him watching her, a soft smile crossed her lips. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice husky with drowsiness. "Just thinking," he murmured, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. She stretched languidly, wincing slightly as the motion pulled at her injuries. "About yesterday? About today? About tomorrow? About the choice that was going to destroy one of them? About you," he said instead, which wasn't entirely a lie. Zara shifted closer, her palm flat against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. "I meant what I said last night about needing your help with the mission." Dex's jaw tightened. "What exactly are you planning?" "A direct assault on the Zirian facility. But not from space, they'll see us coming from light years away. We're going in on foot. Small team, minimal equipment, maximum stealth." "That's suicide," he said automatically. "Maybe. But it's the only way." Her fingers traced the scar on his collarbone, a memento from some long-ago battle. "The weapon they're building, it's designed to emit a pulse that will disable every ship in a 10-system radius. One activation and the entire resistance fleet becomes sitting ducks." The implications hit him like a physical blow. No wonder his handlers wanted her dead so urgently. Zara wasn't just planning to strike back, she was planning to destroy the hegemony's ultimate weapon before it could be deployed. "When?" he asked. 18 hours. We launch at midnight. 18 hours. 6 hours before his deadline. "I need you to modify a special suit for me," she continued. "Something that can get me through their security grid without triggering alarms. Can you do it?" "Of course." The words came automatically, trained responses overriding the chaos in his mind. Zara kissed his jaw, her lips soft against his stubble. "I knew I could count on you." The trust in her voice was like acid in his veins. Dex closed his eyes, fighting the urge to confess everything, the contract, the blood money, the impossible choice that was tearing him apart from the inside. His communicator pulsed again, more insistently this time. Zara glanced at it with mild curiosity. "Important?" she asked. "Requisition forms," he lied smoothly. "For the armor modifications you need." She nodded, satisfied, and settled back against his chest. "Dex?" "Yeah. After this mission, assuming we survive it, I want to talk about us. About what this means." The words were like knives in his chest. "I know it's complicated, command structure, regulations, all of that. But I've never felt this way about anyone before." She looked up at him, brown eyes serious and vulnerable. "Have you?" The honest answer would have destroyed them both. Instead, he kissed her forehead and held her closer, memorizing the weight of her against him, the sound of her breathing, the way her hair smelled like starlight and steel. "No," he whispered. "Never." It was the first completely honest thing he'd said to her in 8 months. Later, after she'd left to prepare for the mission, Dex finally activated his communicator. The encrypted message was brief and brutal. "Final notice, elimination must occur within 12 hours of mission launch. Failure to comply will result in termination of contract and contractor. No exceptions. Attached was a detailed dossier on Zara's unplanned assault, intelligence that could only have come from someone with access to her inner circle. The realization hit him like ice water. They had other assets aboard the Crimson Dawn. If he didn't kill her, someone else would. Unless he warned her. Unless he chose her over everything else he'd ever known. Dex stared at the message until the words blurred, then carefully deleted it. In 12 hours, one way or another, everything would be over. He just had to decide which ending he could live with. The cargo bay hummed with pre-mission tension as Zara's strike team performed final equipment checks. 6 of the Resistance's best operatives, hand-picked for skills and loyalty, moved with practiced efficiency around the modified assault shuttle. But Dex only had eyes for Zara, resplendent in the custom infiltration suit he'd spent the last 10 hours perfecting. Stealth field generators are running at optimal capacity, he reported, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his chest. The thermal dampeners will keep you invisible to their sensors for approximately 4 hours. 4 hours to save humanity, Zara murmured, testing the suit's joint flexibility. No pressure. The joke fell flat. Everyone knew the odds they were facing. The Zirian facility was a fortress within a fortress, protected by automated defenses that had never been breached. But if Zara was right about the weapon being built there, it was their only chance. Final systems check, she announced to the team. We launch in 30 minutes. As the others dispersed to their preparations, Zara moved closer to Dex. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the cargo bay, she looked young and fierce and heartbreakingly beautiful. Walk with me, she said quietly. They found privacy in a maintenance alcove, hidden from the bustle of pre-mission activity. Zara reached for his hands, her fingers intertwining with his. I need you to know something, she said. If this goes wrong. It won't. If it does, she continued firmly, everything I've built, everything we've fought for, will fall to you. The fleet, the resistance, all of it. You're the only person I trust to carry on. The words hit him like physical blows. She was naming him her successor, placing the entire future of the human resistance in his hands, hands that were supposed to end her life in less than 8 hours. Zara, I can't. You can. She stepped closer, her palm against his cheek. You're stronger than you know, Dex. More honorable than you give yourself credit for. Promise me you'll protect what we've built. The promise stuck in his throat like broken glass. How could he pledge to protect something he'd been paid to destroy? I promise, he whispered, hating himself for the lie. She smiled, radiant and trusting, and kissed him with a tenderness that made his chest ache. I love you, she said against his lips. I should have said it sooner. The words destroyed something fundamental inside him. Love. She loved him. The woman he was supposed to kill, the target he'd been studying and manipulating for 8 months, loved him. And God help him, he loved her too. Zara, he started, desperate to confess everything, to warn her about the other assets, to beg her forgiveness for the betrayal she didn't even know was coming. I know, she said softly. I love you too. She was misinterpreting his anguish for reciprocal emotion, and he couldn't correct her. Not now. Not when she was about to risk everything for a cause bigger than both of them. Come back to me, he said instead, the words torn from his throat. Always. The mission launched on schedule. Dex watched from the observation deck as the stealth shuttle disappeared into the starfield, carrying the woman he loved toward what might be her death. His hands shook as he activated his private communicator one last time. The message from his handlers was waiting. Termination window opens in 4 hours. Target must not return from mission alive. Sabotage recommended. Payment transfer approved upon confirmation. Attached were the technical specifications for Zara's infiltration suit, the same suit he'd spent 10 hours perfecting. The same suit he could disable with a single command from his personal interface. All he had to do was wait until she was deep inside the facility, then trigger the system failure that would expose her to every sensor and weapon in the complex. She would die thinking he'd failed her through incompetence, never knowing it was murder. Dex stared at the message until his vision blurred, then made his choice. Instead of accessing the sabotage protocols, he activated the suit's emergency beacon, a fail-safe he'd installed without telling anyone, not even Zara. If the mission went wrong, if she needed extraction, he would know instantly. Then he began typing a message of his own, fingers steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. Contract terminated. Repeat, contract terminated. Payment refused. Consider this my resignation. He sent it before he could change his mind, then destroyed the communicator in a burst of white-hot plasma. There was no going back now. In 4 hours, when the hegemony realized their assassin had turned, Dex Caney would become the most hunted man in the galaxy. But Zara would be alive. And for the first time in his life, that was enough. The emergency beacon screamed to life at 0347 hours, filling Dex's quarters with urgent red light. His heart hammered against his ribs as he activated the tactical display, watching the tiny blip that represented Zara's suit deep within the Zirian facility. She was alive, but the beacon's activation meant the mission had gone wrong. Badly wrong. Dex was already moving, grabbing his combat gear and the emergency extraction kit he prepared against regulations. The ship's corridors were empty, most of the crew was asleep, unaware that their commander might be dying light years away. He reached the shuttle bay in 4 minutes, breaking every speed regulation in the ship. The stealth craft he prepared for exactly this scenario hummed to life as he initiated the launch sequence, muscle memory and training overriding the fear that threatened to paralyze him. The journey to Zirian took 2 hours at maximum burn. 2 hours of staring at that tiny, precious blip on his display, watching it move erratically through the facility's lower levels. 2 hours of imagining what might be happening to her, what his choice to protect her might have cost. When he finally reached the facility's outer perimeter, the scope of the disaster became clear. Emergency lights blazed across the complex, and patrol ships swarmed like angry insects around the main structures. Whatever Zara had accomplished, it had definitely gotten their attention. The infiltration was supposed to be impossible. The facility's shields, sensor arrays, and automated defenses made it a fortress that could withstand a full fleet assault. But Dex had spent 8 months studying every technical manual, every security protocol, every weakness that might be exploited, not to help Zara succeed, but to ensure she failed at the right moment. Now he used that knowledge to save her life. The maintenance shaft he'd identified months ago still showed as unguarded on his tactical display. 20 meters of crawling through ventilation systems brought him to the facility's power distribution center, where a few carefully placed charges would create the chaos he needed. The explosions came exactly as planned. Emergency lighting failed, gravity generators fluctuated, and most importantly, the internal sensors went offline for exactly 97 seconds. 97 seconds to reach Zara. He found her in a storage bay on sublevel 12, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. Her infiltration suit sparked and smoked from some kind of energy discharge, but she was breathing. And when he checked her pulse, it was strong and steady. "Come on," he whispered, gathering her into his arms. "Time to go home." She stirred as he carried her through the corridors, brown eyes focusing slowly on his face. "Dex?" Her voice was weak but wonderfully alive. "What are you doing here?" "Extraction," he said simply. "Mission protocols." "The weapon." "Later. Right now we run." They almost made it clean. The emergency shaft was 20 meters away when the patrol found them, plasma rifles charging with lethal intent. Dex had perhaps half a second to make a choice between his life and hers. He chose hers. The energy bolt meant for Zara took him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the corridor wall. But his return fire was accurate, dropping both guards before they could shoot again. "Dex!" Zara was beside him instantly, her hands pressed against the wound. Oh God, you're bleeding. I'm fine, he lied, struggling to his feet. Keep moving. They reached the shuttle with alarms screaming behind them, hegemony fighters already launching in pursuit. But the stealth ship was fast and Dex was motivated, and they cleared the facility's defense perimeter before the enemy could lock onto their signature. It wasn't until they were safely in hyperspace that Zara finally asked the question he'd been dreading. How did you know where to find me? Dex was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the star-streaked darkness beyond the cockpit. The shoulder wound throbbed in time with his heartbeat, but the pain was nothing compared to the weight of what he had to tell her. There's something you need to know, he said finally. About me. About why I joined your crew. She went very still in the co-pilot seat. What are you talking about? I wasn't just a mercenary before I came aboard the Crimson Dawn. I was an assassin. A very expensive one. The words came out steadily, though each one felt like swallowing glass. The hegemony hired me to kill you. The silence stretched between them like an eternity. When Zara finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. How long? 8 months. From the beginning. And tonight? Was this part of the plan? No. He turned to face her, meeting her eyes despite the pain he saw there. Tonight I chose you over everything else I've ever known. They'll hunt me now the same way they hunt you. There's no going back. Zara was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. Did you complete the mission? The weapon? Yes. It's destroyed. The facility's main reactor went critical about 10 minutes after we escaped. She nodded slowly. Then it was worth it. All of it. Even knowing what I am. What I was sent to do. Zara reached across the narrow space between their seats, her fingers finding his. You could have killed me 100 times over the past 8 months. In my quarters, in the armor bay, during any of the battles when I was wounded and vulnerable. But you didn't. I couldn't. No, she said softly. You wouldn't. There's a difference. The forgiveness in her voice was almost harder to bear than anger would have been. I love you, he said, the words carrying the weight of confession. That's why I couldn't do it. That's why I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the trust you placed in me. Zara smiled through her tears. We'll figure it out together. Outside the cockpit, the stars streamed past in rivers of light, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in his life, Dex Caney was exactly where he belonged. The price of his choice would be paid in blood and exile, in the constant threat of hunters and the weight of a betrayal he could never fully atone for. But as Zara's hand tightened in his, he knew it was a price worth paying.